Good evening. I saw the news that he finished charging this camcorder. I'm eating some candy, some bonbons, and uploading video. So it's 7:30 p.m. Let's try to finish reading. So I'll maybe read one more later. Maybe this I should read the the second table. I think I should do that. But that's so many. I have to read something a bit random. Oh, this one I'm reading, second table periods. Salomon table, that's the first table. That's the second table. So I could read the second table, could read it. And first Roman more maybe. Second table first, and siege of Jerusalem. That's the one I read here, but I have to look the links. I will look links, this one.
Preferred over the other depending on region. Aramaic became widely spoken in Samaria and Galilee while Judah continued to use Hebrew. 107. Although Aramaic had eventually surpassed Hebrew as the most widely spoken language in the region, many people learned Hebrew as a liturgical language. During the 2 centuries, Hephzibah inscription demonstrates that there was some exchange of goods among the local communities and there may have even been some export. It is also possible that the area served as a form of commerce enclave, as balsam and dates from the Jericho area were sold outside the area, and it is obvious that the locals there were not self-sufficient in other ways. 98. But, when looking at the overall economic picture, the scale of imports and exports was insignificant. For instance, the Romans imposed a yearly land tax and harbor tax on Hyrcanus in the sum of 20,665 modia, or around 135.5 tons of wheat for Joppa. A levy of 135.5 tons of wheat was absurdly low considering Joppa was the main Jewish port, indicating that the city only exported a little amount of goods. 98. According to Josephus, the main commercial hubs were the Phoenician coastal cities. They took part in international trade in the Mediterranean Sea and reportedly served as the main ports for the land of Israel's meager import and export requirements. Some of those cities were conquered by the Hasmoneans. While they may not have been completely abandoned, their economic situation and prestige degraded. During this period, only Ascalon remained an independent city, and Joppa continued to function as a small harbor city. The Phoenician coastal cities prospered once more and resumed their status as economic hubs after the Roman seized Palestine. 98. Importing food was important at times of drought or famine, as it was during the time of Herod, 102, and Helena. 103. 98. Nonetheless, as is evident from the Testament of Job, 104, trading at this time was often a characteristic of the coastal cities. 98. Goods. Hervatitri, a partially constructed village of the Second Temple period. A rock-cut wine press at Hervatitri, Jerusalem during the late Second Temple period was a significant center of consumption at this time. This economic center developed to meet the needs of both the Templian pilgrims, as well as those of folks who did not work in agriculture. 98. 105. Doves were raised in the Judean lowlands and sent to the temple. 98. The locations from which the temple received high-quality agricultural items are listed in the Mishnah's Menachot tractate. The highest quality fine flour was transported from farms in Myknes and Zonicha, now Zanoah. The Ephraim flour came in second. Olive trees near Tycho of Galilee served as the temple's main source of olive oil. Regev in the Transjordan came in second. Keruthim, Kerathim, and Hatalim were the main producers of wine, followed by Beit Rima, now Bani Zaid al-Garbia, Beit Lavan, now al-Lavan al-Garbi, and Kfar Signa, in the Lower Galilee. 106. Language. Overview. Judea's linguistic situation during the Second Temple period is defined by the coexistence of two spoken languages, Aramaic and Hebrew. 107. The meaning of the population's bilingualism is debated. Opinions differ on whether speakers express themselves equally in Hebrew or Aramaic, or whether one language is preferred over the other depending on region. Aramaic became widely spoken in Samaria and Galilee while Judea continued to use Hebrew. 107. Although Aramaic had eventually surpassed Hebrew as the most widely spoken language in the region, many people learned Hebrew as a liturgical language. During the 2 centuries of Persian rule, 538-332 BCE, the administrative language was Imperial Aramaic. 107. Beginning in 333 BCE, Koine Greek became the official language of administration and was used to spread Hellenistic culture. Even under Roman rule, the administrative language in the eastern provinces, including Judea, remained Greek. The square script, also known as Ktav Ashuri, had probably already started to replace the Paleo-Hebrew script during the Persian period, though the transition was not complete until the Hellenistic period and traces of the previous script were still in use until the Bar Kokhba revolt. 107. Latin, the language of the Roman army and high levels of administration, had almost no impact on the linguistic landscape. It is less common in texts and archaeology. Only a few Latin papyri were discovered in the region. Those discovered at Masada belonged to the Roman garrison. Aramaic. During the Persian period, Aramaic was the civil administration language. The contract texts were written in Aramaic. The ketubah, marriage contract, get, divorce certificate, and other legal documents mentioned in the Talmud are written in Aramaic. The formulas for the Aramaic texts of the Ketubot have been preserved since the Persian period, even though they were modified during the Hellenistic period. Elephantine's Jewish community has adopted Aramaic, and it was the main language used in the Elephantine papyri and Ostraca. Jesus, a native of the Galilee, and his disciples spoke Aramaic. Funerary inscription in Aramaic Yehoseph Bar Eglon. Despite the fact that Aramaic has become the most widely spoken language, there are few Aramaic texts that provide information on the language spoken in the region during the Second Temple period. 3 books of the Hebrew Bible contain passages in Aramaic. Ezra 4:8 to 6:18 and 7:12 to 26 and Daniel 2:4 to 7:28. The Megillat Ta'anit, the scroll of fasting, was written in Aramaic around the 1st century CE. This is also true of Petagunim, or Aramaic paraphrases of the Bible, but dating them is difficult. Hebrew. Some of the later books of the Hebrew Bible, including Ezra and Nehemiah, Esther, Daniel, Chronicles, and Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, are explicitly dated to the Second Temple period. The first and second verses of the book of Ezekiel were written during the Babylonian exile. There are varying opinions about when Ecclesiastes, the Song of Songs, Jonah, some of Psalms, and possibly the Book of Job were written. The majority of researchers, however, agree that they were composed during the Second Temple period. Most of these books were written in what linguistics call Late Biblical Hebrew. 107. This later form of Biblical Hebrew is particularly notable in the Book of Chronicles, since it occasionally rewrites sections from Samuel and Kings and modifies parts to conform to post-exilic usage. 107. However, not all of the Second Temple literature exhibits the language traits of Late Biblical Hebrew to the same degree. Some of it is written in a manner that is strikingly reminiscent of classical Biblical Hebrew. Portion of the Temple Scroll, one of Dead Sea Scrolls, written in Hebrew during the late Second Temple period. Hebrew was still a spoken language during the Second Temple period, at least in some areas of Judea. It continued to be used up until 200 CE, and possibly even after. It is thought that the Hebrew spoken during the Second Temple period evolved from Biblical Hebrew, possibly from a distinct dialect. This form of Hebrew is now known as Mishnaic Hebrew. The Hasidians, who are believed to be the precursors of both the Essenes and the Pharisees, used a combination of Biblical Hebrew and Mishnaic Hebrew as their literary language, with Mishnaic Hebrew dominating. 107. The literature of the Tanaim and Amoraim of the land of Israel and Babylonia is written in Mishnaic Hebrew, which is later found in the Mishnah. Among the earliest are the tractates of Talmud and Midat. It reflects a living Hebrew that is not just an artificial language reserved for Jewish scholars, despite the fact that this language has been fixed in rabbinic discussions. The Qumran group continued to use late Biblical Hebrew, which was still a literary language, while fusing it with their own unique linguistic traits. 107. The 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus asserts that he addressed the people of Jerusalem in Hebrew. But as usual, his testimony is ambiguous and at odds with the Aramaic transcriptions he uses to describe Jewish traditions. Spoken Hebrew saw a brief resurgence in interest during the Bar Kokhba Revolt, 132-135 CE. The Mishnah, however, was written down circa 200 CE because it could no longer be memorized and could no longer be transmitted orally due to the lack of Hebrew speakers who could memorize it. Archaeology provides evidence of the usage of Mishnaic Hebrew in the Second Temple period. It can be found in texts found in the Judean desert from the 1st and 2nd centuries, including the Copper Scroll found in Qumran and the Bar Kokhba letters and other writings found in caves near Nahal Hever. These documents provide a glimpse of everyday Hebrew, without indicating which regions they pertain to. Judean desert examples tend to indicate that it is a southern dialect. Greek was the primary language of the Jews of Hellenistic and Roman Egypt, particularly those of Alexandria. Although the Jews of Egypt used Aramaic in the early Ptolemaic period, it was quickly abandoned in favor of Greek. It is only in the early Byzantine period that Egyptian Jewish communities communicated with one another in Hebrew, which again served as the official language. 109. The use of Greek was not limited to the Jewish diaspora. From the 3rd century BCE onward, almost all inscriptions in the southern Levant were written in Greek. with the exception of tombs and ossuaries, as well as those in synagogues. 109. Many ossuaries of the period bear inscriptions in Greek, either indicating tombs of families descended from the diaspora or assisting authorities in identifying the tombs. According to the Mishnah, Greek was even present in the Temple of Jerusalem. 110. Greek was widely used in Judea, at least in a certain social stratum. Greek was also used in legal documents such as the Babaka archives and the Bar Kokhba letters. The Septuagint, a Greek translation of Hebrew Bible, was